so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Like she said, my name is Jennifer Jordan. I work for the Chandler Police Department. I've been there for 15 years. I'm a senior crime scene technician. Right now I'm finishing my degree program at NAU, and so part of that degree program I need to teach a lesson, and Teresa was gracious enough to let me come in and do that. So not too long ago, but maybe quite a while ago, I was in a class similar to this at Phoenix College. So congratulate you guys for being in this class and
surviving
in this program. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to teach you how to process for latent prints using powder. Has anybody ever had an opportunity to process for latent prints? Okay. And can you tell me what the circumstances were?
A class I took.
Just a class?
Yeah,
Okay.
we used the magnetic.
And how about, has anybody seen someone process for latent prints?
On TV.
On TV? Okay. How about you?
The other night at work, actually last week, someone's car was broken into, and Chandler Police Department actually came out and they took fingerprints and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Okay. So some of you have seen it. I'm sure you've seen it on TV or CSI. So what I'd like to start with is going to be our objectives for this lesson. So our objectives are, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to have a basic understanding of how to process for latent prints using magnetic powder and black powder. You will also be able to lift those prints, put them on a latent lift card, and fill out that card correctly, and then you'll be very familiar with the terms that are used during the process. Okay? What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to write some of the terms on the board. If there's any that you know, if you could just raise your hand for me.
I'll be watching, and you will get points for knowing the right answers. Yeah. Uh-oh. I need to get rid of it. Did anybody bring anything to process tonight?
Yeah.
Yay, a couple people remembered. We're still processing your wrapper. It's all right. You get a lot of garbage or evidence out of the garbage cans. It's common, actually.
Okay. Does anybody know any of these terms? Latent print card, latent lift tape, magnetic powder, magnetic brush, black powder, or fiber brush? You do? Okay. Come up and write the definition for it.
I should let you know too that we are filming the class just as part of her for her documentation, basically, for teaching the course. So just so you know, the backs of your head is on film.
We need to sign up for these.
I know.
I'll blur your faces out.
I don't know.
Okay, so latent print is a hidden, not visible print.
Yay.
Okay, does anybody have anything to add to that?
It's like the term that's most commonly used, or often misused too, because if it's actually visible, it's called a patent print, right?
So it's a print or ridge detail that's not completely visible to the naked eye, but could be partially visible. Okay. Any of these other ones, do you guys know? Now that you know, you have to come up to the board. You can take non-volunteers as well. Any guesses?
guys,
There's
you all
some
know
easy
it.
ones.
I'll do one. I'll do the tape. And then
Tape, all right.
It's like,
Tape is
I don't know if my
sticking
terms are
stuff
correct,
that-
but I'm gonna write it down anyways. I don't know if that's accurate. That's kind of what it is.
So latent lift tape is kind of fancy tape. It's fancy tape that is treated with a special adhesive so it can lift that powder up. The tape can come in clear, frosted, flexible tape, and different sizes of tape. Anyone else for extra points? No?
You guys know how to do it?
Come on, guys. No,
We'll be taking one non-volunteer.
start picking up people.
Little metal shavings, how do you? Anybody?
Anything extra on that? So magnetic powder is going to be basically iron shavings, okay? The iron shavings are magnetic. They're treated with a black colorant, which gives them that black color for the black magnetic powder. Magnetic powder is very dense, it's heavy. You can process on porous or non-porous items. You cannot use it on metal, obviously. It's magnetic, it's going to stick to that metal, and it's going to ruin your print. So the magnetic wand, I'll go ahead and give you guys that one. It's pretty simple. It's basically a wand that has a magnet in it that is able to pull up those metal shavings, and it adheres to it, and then you can brush it over your item. Now black powder, this is your traditional carbon powder. Very fine, very thin, and very messy. Okay, it can be used on items that are non-porous. And any fragile prints, it's great to use that black powder. That's applied with the fiber brush. Now, the fiber brush is basically thousands of tiny fibers, fiberglass fibers, that are put together into a brush. Those fibers are able to hold that powder and then evenly distribute it over the item. Our last one's going to be your latent lift card. Basically, it's a backing card. It's a backing card where you'll pull your tape off, you put it on that card, the card will indicate all the case information and where you pulled your latent from. So I'm going to go ahead and write these in for you guys. You can write them down if you like. And I'm going to pass around each one of those so you can kind of see it. The tape. Okay. Here's your latent backing card. So it looks kind of like a 3x5. It's glossy on the back side. The front of it usually has all this information here. So it'll be your case number, what date it was, where you went out, what location, what type of crime, where you lifted the item. Most agencies have one similar to this. I know our agency's is very similar to this. This area that is in here is for your sketch, and that's where you'd actually draw kind of a picture of where you're lifting the latent from, and I'll explain later why that's really important. Here's latent print tape. This particular one is a frosted tape, so you can see how it's kind of frosted. Feel free when I pass it around, you can touch it, look at it. You can see it's a fancy Scotch tape, so. Now, magnetic wands come in different sizes. They're fairly expensive ones and less expensive ones. They're single-use type of brushes. So this one is actually used for a single use. And the reason it's done this way is to, if you're using it at a scene where there could be potential DNA, biological hazards, or contamination from processing different items, you would use this. It has a cap on it. You would switch that cap out every time. This part just has that magnet on the end. So these are the kinds we're going to be using today. They're very simple to use. You dip it into your powder and you pull it, and you'll see how the metal filamentals stick to that. And then this obviously is your fiber brush.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how they're starting to only use powders once and brushes once and things like that. With the magnetic brush, you have to just replace the lid or the entire thing?
You would use one-use powder and one-use
Oh,
lid.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so you can think of the magnitude of how expensive that will end up being as well.
Right.
So in these little containers, I have that magnetic powder. I'm gonna pass around the big jar that I pulled it from. You can tell how dense it is. I would recommend try not opening it because it can be kind of messy.
This is the heavy one?
And watch your hands.
So again, it's heavy. Why is it heavy? There's pieces of metal, right? Makes sense. The black powder is just carbon, very fine, very airy. These are like the single-use type of things that you've heard of. So I ordered these for this class because I knew we would all need one. So that's how they would look if someone was going to use that.
Forget the stuff's coming in, she's sitting here waiting for something to me.
Okay, so has everyone seen those items? They work their way back up?
So the actual front part goes on the glossy side?
Your print is going to adhere to the tape. That's your tape and then you place it in. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate now. If you guys want to go ahead and gather around this table, I'm going to demonstrate the use of magnetic powder first. Again, remember, magnetic powder is used on what? Porous and non-porous. So think of your surface, a porous or non-porous surface,
We also talk semi-porous.
or semi-porous. Okay, so foam. Foam is going to be semi-porous, porous surface. Why? Because there's voids in it. Okay, it can absorb things. So the first step in any processing, obviously, is put your gloves on. Why? You protect your hands. You protect the item from transferring your prints to that item as well. Okay.
And You can all thank Jennifer for the gloves, because I don't usually supply gloves.
You guys would be very dirty, let me just say that.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna process this item, and I brought other items for you guys to process also. There are planted prints on this, so obviously they're going to be a lot nicer than a print that you may get if you worked at crime scene. So again, here's that black magnetic powder. You can see how dense it is, and here's your magnetic brush. So just dipping it into that powder, it adheres to it immediately, okay? Now to drop it, you just pull it up, okay? So the trick in using magnetic powder is that you don't want your brush to go up against that item. If your brush goes up against that item, what you're gonna have is a scraping, okay? And what are you doing? You're destroying the print. You want the powder to go on the item. Okay? Another important thing when you process is how you handle your evidence. If I was gonna process this, I don't wanna grab it like this. I'm gonna destroy potential prints, okay? So I'm probably gonna hold it just like this. So, or I'll put my hand inside of it, that's easy for me.
Because what's a latent's worst enemy is? That's right.
So, dealer's powder. The way magnetic powder is, it's going to lose that charge where it's holding on to the magnet and it's gonna fall. So you can see how it's starting to do that already. So I'm brushing lightly over those areas. It's gonna stick to a lot of stuff. It's gonna stick to, it could be residue, it could be fingerprints, it could be soda, anything.
You are touching the cup then with the?
So I'm slightly touching it, yes. You don't wanna scrape.
Okay.
So I'll clarify that. Especially with this brush, the more expensive brushes, you're gonna get a bigger area of powder. And so you'll have more area to actually process. With this, it's harder because it's so small. How much is that little brush? The big ones were like 20, so I think the little one was like 6 or 8, I don't know.
In the grand scheme of things, the Magna brushes can last for years if they're taken care of, and the more expensive ones they do. But it's the initial cost that where you kick out a lot of money.
Right.
Brushes, not so much. Brushes will run between $6 and $8 a piece. At least the type of brush that we've got there.
Okay, so the next step, I've got this covered in powder. Are those all prints? What do I need to do? I need to scan it. So I'm gonna look at it. Are there prints on there? Do I see rich detail? So if you look at this, and I'm just gonna walk around and show you guys, you can tell like someone grabbed here. You can tell there's some marks that look exactly like fingers. There's no rich detail. Right there is, but not in this area. Now that could happen with gloves. It could happen because this is a porous item. There's so many different factors. You see that? Now look a little bit closer. Do you see the rich detail on that one? See where the ridges are? Okay.
Seems like you gotta like really look at it.
You really have to look, and that's one of the biggest things is your eyes have to be very sharp. And you get trained over doing it for many years where you can actually spot it. So obviously I've been doing this for a while, and it seems like it doesn't matter where I go, you see prints all the time because you're used to seeing that. You're
I
trained
call
to
that
see
an
it.
illness, actually.
That and blood. I
Yeah.
said blood. I can always find a little blood spatter. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to lift it. Everything else on here is a little bit smudgy. I don't see much for detail, although I did touch a lot of areas. So your next step is going to be to lift that area. So I place my item down. I get my tape ready. Tape should be dog-eared. Dog-eared means it's got a little tab on it. If it doesn't, what happens is if it sticks to it, it's going to be hard to get that back up. Okay? So you always have your tape that way. Pull your tape out. Find the latent you want to lift, and you're going to let that tape go right on top of the latent. I like to set it like this and then hold it with my finger and smooth it. and that's it. Now, let's say there were multiple latents on here that I really wanted to lift. I would choose to lay all of my tape first before lifting this one. The reasoning behind that is I want to touch this as little as possible, or touch anywhere where latents are as little as possible when they're unprotected. As soon as I put this tape on there, that's protected. I don't have to worry about it. It's not going anywhere. Okay? So your next step is your latent card. Latent card, I passed it around, you saw kind of what info's on there. So you would fill out your info, and when you guys do your own lifting, I want you to fill it out. Just, you can put whatever info you want in there. I just want you to have the experience of filling it out. So prints are lifted from a sonic cup. Put my name for who lifted it, my initials, my badge number. Type of crime, case number, and the date. Today, the 21st. I work nights, so all the days run into each other, So sketch area. I'm not a sketch artist. I'm not that great. I can draw a cup though. So you do your best. So the way I draw my cup, that's the opening. That's my cup, okay? That's it. If I had multiple ones, maybe I'd put the sonic on there so I could tell where it's from. Then I'm just gonna put an X. The X is indicating where I'm pulling that lift from. And then I'm gonna put an arrow there. And I'll explain more about the arrow later. This is all about orientation of your print. Okay, so you flip your card over. And again, make sure my tape is smooth. On this dog ear area, I'm gonna put an arrow. Arrow which way? This way, because that matches my picture, right? Now, if my picture, I happen to want my arrow that way, I'll draw my arrow that way. It just needs to match. Pull it up. And next I'm gonna place it on the card. Same thing here, like when I place it on there, you wanna make sure there's no air bubbles, really smooth it out. Now, because the arrow's on there, I'm gonna transfer that arrow to the actual card. This is gonna get discarded. This is not part of my lift, okay? So I put an arrow on there. The reason why I'm choosing not to write on the tape is because if, for whatever reason, this was covered in latent prints, I don't want to write on top of a latent print. That'll make it hard for the examiner to review it. So the last step I need to do is I need to initial my tape. So I just put my initials in the corner or any part where it doesn't go to the edge of this card. Now, the purpose of me doing that is it's acting as a seal. So this is showing that I placed the tape there, I initialed it. This also helps so that in the future you would know it wasn't moved. Somebody didn't plant prints there because it's half on the tape and half on the card. It can't be repositioned like that, or it would be difficult to do that. Okay? So you guys can pass that one around. Does anybody have questions about the way I process that? No? Okay, so black powder. What's important about black powder?
Super fine,
Super fine, and what do you use it on?
non-porous.
Okay. But you can also use magnetic on non-porous, right? Not as messy. Magnetic is both. Black is just non-porous. So I prefer to use magnetic. And I've had a few circumstances early in my career where I've used the black carbon powder and didn't really see anything. Nothing came up, and I chose to go back over it with black magnetic, and it came right up. And that worried me that I could be missing prints. So I prefer to use this. I'm sorry.
Are they using that out then? It's not as-
No, it's still very effective. You have to use more, and it depends on, you know, what surface you're using it on, as well as how the prints work, lots of different factors. So it's extremely effective. There's just, you know, plus and minus for both types of powders. So I tend to prefer this powder versus this. So this is your fiber brush. All those fiberglass fibers are in the brush. It's gonna hold on to that powder inside of it. Leave a very little bit amount, okay? So I'm dipping it into the powder the way I do it, and this is probably even too much right now. I personally turn it this way and I twirl it. By doing this, that powder's getting in there. It's not getting on me. And now I'm gonna process this item. Same thing when I handle it. How should I handle it? Somebody probably screwed it off the CD thing, so I'm gonna hold it this way. And then with your fiber brush, you're just gonna twirl it. Now this can touch it, okay? Those fibers are really soft and delicate.
We call it tickle the surface with the tips of the brush. If you think of it that way, then you won't apply too much pressure. Just tickle it.
So you can tell, because this is so light and airy, it's not sticking the way this did, right? It's not so dark. So you really have to use your eyes, see where you see it sticking, see if you see any detail. And when you do, continue going over that area. It's not going to ruin the print. It's going to help enhance it. So. Same thing on here, there's a little bit of ridge detail on here. You guys can touch this and pass it around, just don't touch right in that area. It's a very small area, right? You should be able to see those little ridges.
Got it.
Just that little guy.
Is that really wonderful?
Would that be enough print to,
Have to ask Teresa, okay. She would know, it's probably not, but if I developed it a little more maybe, I think.
This little bitty guy?
Pinky?
Probably not. And so, good demonstration. I mean, that was a print. It was put on that plastic on purpose.
And it's still not coming up.
It's not 100% of the time. Unless you're talking to a bad guy, then I can get prints off anything. But yeah, it's, just because they handled it doesn't mean you're gonna get prints off of it.
So would that turn out better if you used the magnetic on there, or?
I personally think so. You can try to use it. I like to, at least for me, I like to use this powder when I'm processing something that is obviously metallic, because I don't want this to stick to it. Or if for some reason I think it's a really fragile print, because I want to be very gentle with it, I would use that brush. Sometimes I process with this, and I clean it up with this, because this is so dense and it sticks to it, I want to really clean up the areas between the ridges. So, what do we see? That scares me, or scared me. And so, I usually will use magnetic, I just prefer it. You know, and I didn't spend a ton of time with that, but I did do the whole surface.
Well, but y'all pass it around too.
True, that's true.
So,
That's true, I didn't think of that.
yeah.
Well, no, nobody touched the.
Yeah,
Nobody
so-
touched the inside.
Some, I saw a few people.
Someone messed up and touched the inside, or the outside. But for me, I prefer this. you know, different
Great on
crime
plastic.
scene tags have different views on it. Okay, so same thing, place my tape, place my arrow marker. I'm gonna draw my sketch. Is the X where I'm lifting it from? It's kind of toward the bottom-ish. My arrow, pull that tape off. Transfer the arrow, pull off that tab, and then I initial it. Who remembers why initials are important and what purpose it serves?
Can't tamper it.
Serves as a seal. You guys can pass this around if you want. Now I want to talk a little bit more about directional arrow and why it's important, and orientation of the print. So let me give you an example of a case. We have a bar fight, and the victim is hit over the head with a beer bottle. The witnesses say that the suspect had a bottle like this, came up to the victim, hit them on the head. Okay? We have an unknown suspect, but we have the beer bottle. Good, right? So they process the beer bottle for latent prints. We're gonna have latent prints here, right? Probably have latent prints here. So when they go talk to the suspect, hey, your prints are on this bottle. This is the weapon that was used in this assault. Oh yeah, I was there. I got my beer from the bar and grabbed it. I took a drink, fight broke out, and I left. If we don't have a directional arrow on our latent card, and we don't indicate it on our picture of the item along with a directional arrow and an X, we're not going to be able to disprove or disprove what he's saying. If you're holding a bottle like this, what's that orientation? Different, right? Different than just grabbing it this way. So that's why it's very important to always have that. If you just have a picture of a bottle, got prints from here and that's it, that doesn't show he held it this way. Can you think of any other circumstances where it would make a difference in a case? So how about a vehicle? Just as important as that directional and the location with the X is interior or exterior. So I walk by a vehicle and I touch the window. That doesn't mean I broke into it, but why are my prints on the inside pushing down the window? Makes a difference in a case, huge difference. It can make or break a case, it can substantiate what someone's saying. So that's the importance of that. So does anybody have questions? Okay. All right. You guys get to process now. So I think Teresa has a setup that she's going to do. I actually have items that I brought. So my special people that came up and wrote on here, you get to pick your items first.
Cool.
So there's porous and semi-porous, non-porous items. I'd like you to have at least one of each. You brought some too. So, and you can use what you brought just as
Pick it
well.
up.
Yeah, pick whatever. All right. And then your supplies are over here. So there's gloves, magnetic wand. These are your magnetic powders. And then grab some magnesium cards.
We're gonna lay tarp down. We're gonna move, some tables into on top of the plastic. Then we're gonna put another plastic sheet over the top of that. And then you can move on your stuff in. So I know this is like the cheapest thing, but it will work.
CD is great. Sometimes we'll have a stolen vehicle that we recover, and what I like to do is always put the eject button on the CD player. A lot of times they want to listen to their music in the stolen car. And so, then I'll get a nice CD with nice prints on it. How many tables do you
Okay,
want?
so just put a few tables right down the middle of this.
Just like that?
We probably only need like maybe 2 or 3. Probably 3. Let's do 3. Now the menu. That should be sufficient space for you guys to. Just drape this right over the top. Because believe it or not, it is really hard to get the black powder off of these tables. But I brought my cleaner anyway.
When someone broke in my car, you get the powder or whatever on the car. Is it
Forever.
forever to get off? So it's like,
I feel bad sometimes. That's probably one of the perks of the job is not having to clean up your mess.
Yeah.
Not that we purposely try to be messy,
I
but.
think I figured through like 2 car wash too, and it like didn't come off, and I finally ended up like getting spongy, like scrubbing it down for a while.
And usually I make sure I tell people this is how you get it off. And that black powder though,
She dipped fast. She got it too hot.
blow your nose and the black powder comes out.
Oh, for days.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Great, it's great.
You blow that out.
Yeah, it's, because it's so fine and with controlling your breathing in, so a lot of times you'll get this mustache of black powder or.
Yeah, when you work a really big scene, it's not uncommon to be having, yeah, to just be covered with powder.
Maybe that's why I find it, no, just kidding.
It makes a huge difference.
They both serve a purpose and.
Try not to spill, but, you know, try not to spill.
So, if you guys want to grab these supplies too, so it'll be gloves, magnetic powder, magnetic brush. These packs have the different caps in them. You don't have to use those. Just use the one that it comes with.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, gosh, if there's 2, you definitely want one of each.
So we need 2 cards or just one?
Did you
I take a couple. You can lift more than just one.
get signed in? Don't forget to.
Okay.
Or, I guess.
So this powder, because it's so fine, I'm just gonna put one out or a couple out. Try not to spill it.
I should be able to
We have 2 in hand.
No, I don't have to do that.
No, twirly.
Oh.
Yeah, why don't you do that? And this you'll need, we got that last week. And, but you should be okay.
They're one size fits all. That's what it said.
And the review is gonna go over everything.
So I'm gonna have you guys, at least for my portion, process for about 10 minutes, and then please ask me if you have any questions or you're having difficulty with anything. Here's more of those items.
You have more plastic? and your breasts
Yeah.
out of it?
Brown now.
Here, we're like, here, Tim.
You need it
You guys,
tonight? We're gonna put it in your box at work. That sounds okay.
if you guys think we're ready, feel free to use this table too. Be careful, there's no stuff on the floor.
I'll give them what it's worth it.
You know,
Oh my gosh.
if you do get anything on you, Dawn. And a toothbrush is the best thing to get powder out of.
Oh, it's got the little
It's
tab.
tough though.
Can I wrap this around my head?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
We're just gonna shrink that. Only thing I did.
So handy.
I don't wanna get, like,
Yeah, you're smart.
Look at that, like, playing with down. I appreciate you.
Just a big old knot. Just
so
don't trip
stylish.
over it. I'm telling you, yeah, you got lots of room.
Whoa, so cool.
You don't have any good trash bags.
You know what, trash bags is the one thing I didn't bring. There's,
I'll just put them back into
I have-
the red ball.
I have a bag. You can always put it back in the garbage can at the back of your room too.
Excuse me. My trash bag's coming through, excuse me. That's one mistake if they have to work.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
So once you start seeing the fingerprints start to develop, then do your brushing in the direction that the ridges are flowing. So if you, it looks like a whirl pattern, just kind of follow the circular pattern of it. And what that does is that helps deposit the powder on the top of the ridges, but it cleans out the furrows. So normally when you first start it, it's just kind of a broad brush in the whole surface. Then when you start to see it collect on the surface, that's when you start doing your little enhancing technique. And that's where I use the black powder to do that initial quick sweep of the surface, because it's much faster than magnetic to apply on a large surface. But the trick is you have to learn to identify where it's starting to collect, because it's not always as dark as the magnetic stuff is. But you need something?
Oh, go ahead, I'm listening to you talk, I was gonna
No.
get after done.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna grab a regular brush. for the-
You want a powder brush?
Yeah, start with that.
So good job holding your items. See that you listened how you should hold it and not where they touch. Light bulbs are good, and we get light bulbs on crime scenes sometimes where someone burglarizes that house, they reach in, unscrew the light bulb so all the lights are off.
Oh, that's very creepy. The light bulbs like get really hot. No problem.
Yeah, all we gotta do is find one that works. Now, actually, to me, one of the bigger challenges is learning to use the tape. She's got a rounded surface, total bare to try to, and it's just, it takes practice. On a rounded surface like that, hopefully it's not totally covered with fingerprints, but usually if you kind of pull a little bit of the tape out and kind of arc it so it's doing this dip, and then put the bottom of that dip right on top of the latent itself and then smooth it out, because everything around it, it's just going to be all wrinkled and everything because of the rounded surface. Then the other trick is, okay, well, so if you're in the field, well, where are you going to put this stuff while you're processing it? How are you going to hold it? Okay, now, how are you going to lift it out in the field? You don't have a table to put it on.
Buddy system.
Good.
And if it's windy, let's add that
Oh,
there.
oh, fun stuff outside when you're trying to lift something with tape and the tape is blowing out of your hands. Oh yeah, good times. It's like, this is the easy part. This is control. Crime scene work is not control.
So did I didn't see anything.
It's a challenge.
So like, if you have two
Is it my
fingerprints
eyes?
right next to each other, do you wanna like try to single it out? Like,
You can, if they're right next to each other, you can lift it. One of the first things that you learn really quick is you learn to pull as much tape as will fit on one card. So you get real good at going, yep, just pull a little bit out so that you can get both of those lists on a single card.
So like on the CD, which way would the arrow go then at that point?
You're probably really not gonna have an arrow. The most important thing on here is gonna be top and bottom.
Okay.
You
Shiny
could,
side.
you might, yeah, you could say, you can describe it any way you want. You could show direction toward the center. What I do is, all my directional arrows automatically
I do like.
refer to up.
You're gonna do it on the
Yeah.
If my arrow is indicating anything other than up,
Your tape.
I write it next to it. Like
I like
on
the
this one,
sense that it is a tape.
inside,
Inside.
It looks.
whatever you use. Yeah, so if I don't put anything next to my arrow, it's always telling me it's up.
Straight across.
But like if I'm on the top of the hood of a car, there's no up, you're on the top, right? So I'm gonna use an arrow to go forward.
Okay.
So.
It's out just a little bit more. You can actually shoot, you can pull out as long as that cord is, or a little bit longer.
Oh, okay.
And then just tear it off.
I have a better pen. Mine's
No,
not
I
pretty
mean, I
bright.
go right again, I'm the only one that's like moving. Can I use one of these brushes?
Magnetic?
No, this one.
Is your tape stick now?
No, we do not cut it right.
I don't. Because I use the roll and the dog ear to help me control it. And when you put it on your surface, make sure you're pushing out all your wrinkles and your air bubbles.
Okay.
And then see, so your lift is exactly opposite of how you put it down. So normally, I'll like
I just do it on
do
the
something
tab,
that,
just in case you write down the down.
you load up this way, and then when I put it down, I go exactly the opposite. So I use the dog ear to help me out, I start it,
So when I
and then
took the pen,
just smooth it right down.
like this, so I probably follow
So you never actually taken off the roll?
Take care of your arrow.
I don't. Some people do.
So it just depends on your control.
It's,
So, okay.
yeah,
So you
it's
can draw
totally,
your
it's
model.
things, the little management techniques that you have to come up with. That's why I like to show people different ways of doing it.
Okay.
So if you want
As
it.
long as it works.
As long as it works, exactly.
But then on your
So,
curve,
see,
you have
you-
your arrow that way. Yeah.
Pretty lovely print.
It just has to match.
Even without my glasses. Oh yeah, that's pretty cherry. They don't get much better.
Everyone getting pretty good results. Yeah, you guys are doing good with air bubbles too.
The tape, to me, the tape is more of a technique thing than the brush is.
It's the hard part.
It really is, I
It's
think it
awkward.
is.
You wouldn't think it is.
I know.
I'm so happy I have this back around my waist.
Why don't you just wear like back clothes?
Well,
Did you forget?
Let me see
yeah, I
that.
didn't open it. It was like.
Well, that did pretty good though, to be honest.
Like, I'd rather look good in class.
I went to the zoo,
Air
okay?
bubbles.
I
like grab
washed
it
my
all
feet
way,
forever,
so
so you
kinda
have a little bit of a void.
Yeah.
I didn't draw a picture of mine. Oops.
Are you getting dirty?
It's, me too, mine's right there on page 5. Always, constantly, because I know I've already got it on my face somewhere.
I know. We're not to.
Murphy's
try not
Law
to touch.
says the second you put rubber gloves on, or your gloves on, your nose will itch. So I planted the seed.
I told him.
Mine happens when it's at a bioscene with a mask.
Really?
And
Yeah.
I can't get it.
Yes, I know, then you're like
Does it make
on
any-
the outside of the mask.
Don't get my cards dirty on
What you
that.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
So it does take, it's not hard, but it does take technique. You do have to master the brush. You'd be shocked with the black powder brush. When you use the twirl, it won't take you but a couple of minutes, and your thumb will just start screaming. Because you're not used to doing that kind of a motion with your hand, and you start getting a muscle cramp in your thumb. It's sad, but it happens to everybody.
Detail?
And then learn to deal with tape.
So how'd you go about
Another one, like, I used two different
Well,
ones.
this said, I've been doing this for 15 years, so 15 years ago was a little bit different than today.
Yeah.
So, CSI had not come out yet, or had just come out. Now think about everybody you know that wants to do this job.
Yeah, yeah.
What did that do? It flooded the job market.
Yeah.
And so requirements to be in a position that's even just a road technician have gone way up because that job market is flooded,
Yeah.
partially because of that and other requirements. So for me, I only had my AA degree because even now our job description that's all you need.
Okay.
But the last few people that have been hired, they have their master's degrees. So that tells you how much of a change within a span of, 10,
We've had
15
people with
years.
doctorates apply.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's for a road technician. Now, I don't think that's necessary,
Yeah.
but just because the way the job market is, it's coming up. So your competition is huge.
Yeah, wow.
Now, the best thing I can recommend to people is to volunteer, to keep really clean, make sure your polygraph is gonna go nice and smooth, because that weeds out a ton of people. You've got
Yeah.
people who work in private labs and have their masters, and their polygraph is not clean enough to get them into the police department.
Wow.
So our standards, even as being a civilian, you have to be
Yeah, this
same
round
standards
part
like
was
police
good.
officers.
Yeah.
No convictions, so it's a ton of standards. If you look up Aids and Post, you see all of them on there.
Okay, okay, wow.
That is your biggest advantage
Yeah.
to the job market. And that's about it. So.
Okay.
Now, and I would add to that, if you meet their minimum requirements, apply, and just keep applying.
Yeah.
Because you just never know, as long as you meet those minimum requirements, you could get lucky. It took me 2 years to get in.
Oh,
How
okay.
long did it take you in applying? You were lucky?
I was
like, oh,
lucky,
first
however, I was lucky at another agency not doing crime scene work. So working with an agency, so I was doing admin at the county.
Yeah.
Started going to school, got what I needed, started applying, then I got.
That's true, it took me 2 years, and I got hired for records, doing 10 print work.
So that's your end, it's like, you wanna know about the police department, know about the inner workings.
Tickle the surface with the brush.
That-
A little bit
that's
too much
better.
pressure.
Yeah.
There you go, that's way better.
You wanna try
I
a rush next?
Sure, yeah.
It's very
That's fun.
meticulous work, very meticulous.
So you can see how long it takes to do one item, and you have a couple latent cards that you left. So obviously there's bigger crime scenes you might go out to, or a recovered stolen vehicle where we've left 100 latent cards in the summer heat. And then Teresa gets to go through them all.
Sort them all out, yes.
In the AC?
Yeah. You know what? And that's why I'm not doing crime scene anymore. I love crime scene work, but yeah, it's okay.
There
I don't mind.
are hard days.
Yeah.
They're-
How do you go
Oh,
and
that's
use
a
that?
good one, that's fine.
Wow.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Yes,
I only use this too, so.
But I can tell you, I still love my job, and I still get excited when I find that cherry print. And
Yeah.
so I know I'm where I need to be.
Yeah.
Are there, those your glasses you're doing?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah,
you're
they're
gonna
old.
hold
Yeah,
that
I don't use them.
for- You're gonna have the ring around your eyes when you're done.
No, I don't use them anymore.
Oh, good.
I thought I put like really good prints on the glass and I can't see anything on it.
I'm sure Teresa's gone over what can affect how those prints are left. The surface you're putting it on, the surface of your hands,
Okay, well, then I had no.
the environment. So if your hands are maybe fairly dry, that could be why.
Now it's sweating like a pig
Yeah.
in these gloves.
Oh, I know. It's great, right? And when you're outside, you're processing away, and then you happen to lift your arm, and the sweat pours from the glove. It's
But
like,
what is the most disgusting?
yes. That's why I always wear cotton. Always wear cotton. Plus, my fingers are so long, the gloves won't
Hey,
fit.
do I need to start over then? Because I have nothing on these glass that I can see.
Yeah.
Let me see.
A lot of times when we make a control print, we're going for an oily part, lotion. I like lotion first. Because it's just so
Yeah,
hard
there's some
to,
prints, but,
Are there? Okay, my eyesight is like not here for this.
they're really light. Were you processing with black or magnetic?
Well, I did black and I didn't see anything, so I figured, well, I'll try the magnetic.
Try huffing on it.
Yeah. So huffing, I don't know if she showed you before, you're adding moisture to that print. Good thing to know or think about when you're doing it is, do I need DNA off this item? Do not huff if that's the case.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you can just huff on it. See how
The
it goes
fog.
onto it, and it's going to dissipate. Now, you don't want to have powder on their wall. It's in that, before it dissipates completely, because it will just stick to it. But by doing that, you're rehydrating that print, basically. So do that a few times, run your powder, maybe it'll come up a little bit more. But there's rich detail on there.
You can see where'd you detail? Okay.
I can't. Once my eyes go, I probably can't do this job anymore, I'd say.
That's with glasses.
True, a lot of people wear glasses. I just,
So the idea is that you huff on it, and as soon as it all evaporates, then powder it quickly.
Oh, powder it quickly?
You're hydrating it now, but you can go ahead and. In the lab, we will actually add humidity into the super glue chamber. We'll add humidity into the chamber for the same purpose. Did it come up a little better for you? Is it on the inside or right outside?
let me squeeze that in.
Hey, Andy.
It's on the inside.
It's the tough part about glass. Plastic is a bear too, plastic bags, because you get it and you're like, powder lift, that's easy to tell. When you get into the dye stains and everything and you're working in the dark, it can be really hard to tell which side the print is actually on.
Is that one that I brought in? Yeah. So those Sonic cups, I planted prints on them with greasy fingerprints yesterday, day before. It is a porous, semi-porous surface. Not a whole lot's coming up. So what did that do? The porous surface kind of absorbed everything, and that's why we're not seeing much rich detail. So go to Sonic on happy hour. You can tell what I like to drink, Sonic, Starbucks.
But it's also one of the reasons why crime scene, the powder works great at crime scene, because what have you got? You've got fresh residues. Sometimes you're unlucky and the scene's been sitting for a while, but oftentimes the scene is relatively fresh. And these powders are going to work very nicely on the fresh residue. Much tougher as time goes on. Then you're going to get to the point where you're going to want to bring it into the laboratory to do chemical processing on it. But man, those fresh residues out at a crime scene, on a lot of surfaces, the powders work fantastic.
Because we're in Arizona in the hot sun, we also see prints that are actually baked. I call them baked. Some of these prints on there, hot sun is baking those prints on there. You can see them clear as day. You can't lift them.
Or the fun part is during the summer, when you go to lift that print off the car and you slide it down and you go to peel it up and it's so hot, the glue is staying on the car and the tape is coming up.
Or the paint comes up.
Or the-
that do also happen.
Burn your little fingers, yeah. Stuff like that you don't think about, but you get really quick with tape during the heat of the day.
So the only thing on this would be a directional arrow.
I never understood.
Do you not understand it? Okay. So if you don't put a directional arrow on here or here, how do we know it was lifted this way or this way or this way? So it's, all it has to do is match the picture. So let's say you have tape on
I
here
understand,
like this.
I have my fingertips like that.
And for your pictures, and whatever arrow you put on here needs to match this. So if you happen to say, well, I like to do my arrows this way, well, then your arrow needs to be that way. Okay? Usually you're gonna do an up arrow, okay? So you would do it this way.
What you gotta remember is that it's obvious to you right now, but when you put that tape down on that card,
She's
what
back
this
to it now.
surface is gone.
Yeah.
All it is the fingerprint now. So if it was important how that light bulb was handled, it's been lost without that directional arrow.
Okay. So did the bottle example make any sense to you when I told you that?
Sort of.
Sort of? Okay. So when I hold this bottle, how are my hands? This way, right? And when she looks at it, she can tell those are the 4 fingers, I have my arrow, so she knows, okay, it was like this. This is how they held it. If my hand's this way, it's upside down, right? So do you see how that makes a difference? If I didn't have an arrow there, how are we gonna know it was this way or
So it
this
just
way?
changes
Yeah,
it? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
okay.
I had a case once, it was a homicide case. The wife was a casual cocaine user, and she died of an overdose. And the prosecutor's case was basically that the husband forced cocaine into his wife's system and overdosed her.
That's awesome.
And one of the pieces of evidence that came up was a credit card. I know, surprise, right? So I happened to develop a fingerprint, an index finger on one side of the card, and opposite that, I developed the thumbprint. So the defense loved this because a lot of people use credit cards to cut their coke to make their little lines, right? But what he didn't do is, it was the old OJ rule. He didn't actually look at it before he asked the question. Because what I had was a finger going up this direction, but the thumb on the other side was going the opposite direction. There's no way the 2 prints were made at the same time. There's no way to grasp it with the finger going this direction and the thumb coming back this way. It just can't happen. So the direction those fingerprints were sitting on the credit card was very important.
And which side as well?
The fact
Because
that
it
they
wasn't
were on each,
indicated
one on
how
one
to
side and one on the other, exactly. And half the time you really don't know when you're doing the list. You just have to look at it and say what could be important and give as much information as you can. That's part of the reason why a lot of people do the drawings too. The drawings can actually tell a lot more, and it's easier than writing it all out in sentences, trying to describe where it's at.
This one's quite hard, I have your copy.
Is anybody having any difficulty or any problems at all processing?
I think it's like all smudged on the
Okay. Which will happen, you'll see everything from pristine prints to smudge prints,
What happens if you do this, and you have a big earhook in the middle of your water bottle? I was trying to take the whole thing because there were so many little ones. This is off to the side.
So in this circumstance, we have different tape that you could use as well,
Oh,
but it's kind of a flexible tape. But all you can do is, you don't have any prints on that side, I'm assuming. So you can really push that in there.
Oh,
Push it
okay.
into those words.
Okay, there you go.
As much as you can.
Got it.
So now, see how it's gotten in there? You just gotta work with your item.
Part of it, and I think a huge part, crime scene people tend to be creative people. Because when you walk into a crime scene, you have no idea what you're going to face. And the really good crime scene people are the ones that can roll with the punches. They can take a situation and go, okay, now, how do I work with this? How do I work with this weird piece of evidence that's given me problems? You gotta be able to think outside the box. And the better you do that, I think the better you actually handle crime scenes. People that are super rigid, they can still do a crime scene, but I think it's not as easy for them as it is for people that are creative and can figure out how to work through something that could be a big obstacle for other people. I had a dead body in a bathtub. He was fully clothed, but that's where he was shot to death. Big guy. It was actually a biker gang. It was like 4 people all shot to death in this apartment. So part of your job is to document this scene with photographs. And with a body, there are those standard, and I talked about it before, how you do standard photographs of a body. And you tend to get overalls and headshots and everything. So now I got this guy, this huge man, in a bathtub, and I got to try to document as best as possible. So you just start remembering that the whole thing could be part of your crime scene. There could be evidence. You don't want to touch things. How do I hang over this bathtub, getting the shots I need without having to step on things and lean on things? And
Okay, I've got 4 fingerprints. Do I do them individually, or do I try to
Do
pick
it
them up?
together.
Okay, but
So,
it's not, I'm gonna cut off part or something.
so
Because of how
section
big it
it
is?
however you can it.
Okay.
You're gonna take the largest amount that's gonna fit on that latent card.
now
Okay,
be
so-
careful with your tape. Don't press too hard because it is paper.
So see how this one's lower?
Yeah,
I would do those 3 and then do this one.
okay.
The importance of having all those fingers, do you want to explain that? So when you're looking at it, instead of doing individual, by having all those,
Oftentimes, we call those sequential prints because they were all put down at the same sequence. At the same time, they were all laid down. So most of the time, all of those prints aren't gorgeous. Usually you have one print that's really nice and the other ones around it are, they're okay, but they're, so I now, instead of having to search only one print, I'm searching more like a 10 print card. I have maybe 3 patterns that I can tell they're patterns. This is going to make my search and elimination of subjects much faster because I can look at it and usually tell which hand it is because you know the sequence. The fingers, the index finger is a little bit lower than the middle finger, and then the ring finger is usually about the same height as the index finger, and then the little finger is quite a bit lower than the other 2. So you can tell by the shape that they're laid out in sometimes which hand it is, which fingers it is, and being able to see at least some pattern can make my search tons easier.
Okay, so now do I try to put them all on the same card because they are so,
No, if you've got more than one piece of tape down, I would use separate cards.
okay, so you guys have been processing, no questions, no problems. You gotta understand the basics of magnetic powder and black powder, which is our first objective. Second objective is be able to lift those latent prints, put them on a latent card, fill out your latent card correctly. So we've done that. And then our last objective is to be familiar with the terms that we use during this process. So I am done with my lesson. I'm not sure what else Teresa has for you guys. I do have some student evaluation forms. If you could just fill them out for me, it would help me. Don't have to put your name on it. And then if you're done processing, just go ahead and put the caps on the powder and then I'll do some of the cleanup. But here are the forms, I'll just put them right here.